You should have been able to collect the program outside, which has the order of speakers as well as the 2 prakim of Tehillim that we will say, Lamed Gimel, followed by Tet Zayin. You have the Hebrew, and 33 and 16 on the back are in English. We'll say together, first kapitel, Lamed Gimel. Rananu tzadikim baduna ila yisharim navasila. Hodu laduna ibchino benevel asho zamrula. Shiru lo shir chadash heitivu nagen bisrua. Ki yashad vaduna v'chol maasehu be'emunah. Ohav tzedakah v'mishpat chesed Adonai malach haaretz. Midvadonai shamayim nasu v'ruach piv kol tzvam. Kneis kanein mei hayam noisein b'tzaros tamos. Yiru me'Adonai kol haaretz mimenu yaguru kol yoshvei tevel. Ki hu amav vayihi hu tziva v'yamod Adonai hefir atzas goyim heinihi machshvos samim atzas Adonai leolam tamod machshvos libo ledor vador ashrei hagoy asher Adonai Elohav ha'am b'cha v'nachalo lo. Mishamayim mibid Adonai re'adus kol b'nei ha'adam mimchon shivto ishgiach el kol yoshvei haaretz hayotzer yachad libam hamevin el kol maaseihem ech hamelech nosha b'rav chayil gibor lo yinatzel b'rav koach sheker hasus lishua b'rav chelo lo yimalad. Hinei ein Adonai el yirav li'achalim lechastoi להציל ממוות נפשם לחייסם ברב נפשנו הכסה לאדוני עזרנו מנענו כי בו ישמח ליבנו כי בשם כאשר בטחנו ייחסתך אדוני עלינו כאשר ינחלו לך. Say kapitel Tet Zayin. מכתם לדוד שמרני אל כי חסי סיבך אמר לאדוני אדוני אתה תבשיב על עליך לקדושים אשר בארץ המה ואדירי כל חפציבם יבוא אסויסם אחם ארוכו בעל אשיג נכסיהם מדם ובעל אשא שמוסם על שפסי אדוני מנס חלקי וחייסי אתה תמיך קרא לי חבלים נבלו לי בנימים אף נחלת שפרה עלי אברך את אדוני אשר יעצני אף לילות יסרוני כלי עשי שיביסי אדוני לנגדי תמיד כי מימיני בא למות לכן שמח ליבי ויגל כבודי אף בשרי ישכון לבטח כי לא יעזוב נפשי לשאול לא יסיתן חסתך לירוס שחס תודיעני אור החיים סביבס מחויס אס פניך נימוס ומנך נצח. Welcome. Good evening. As we come together to mark the Shloshim, the end of the 30-day period since our community's beloved founding Rabbi Moshe Kasinetz, Alei Shalom, was laid to rest. I'd like to welcome Mayor Anthony as well as the Livingston Council members, to the distinguished Rabbonim, and to the community leaders who have chosen to join us this evening. We very much appreciate you being here. I'd like to acknowledge and again offer sincerest condolences. Firstly, to his Rebbetzin, to Mrs. Sarah Kasinetz, who was Rabbi Kasinetz's partner to the very fullest in everything he did. It's truly wonderful to see you here, Mrs. Kasinetz, in your shul after so long. And we hope that we will see you many more, please God, in the future for simchas in only good health. To Leah and to Shimi Barba, to Esther and Israel Prus, and to Shlomit and Dror Frommer, together with all your children and your grandchildren, we wish you all nechama and strength as you adjust to the new reality of not having your dear father and grandfather physically present. And you should take comfort from the memories, the stories, the lessons, and the abundant nachas that you know he got from all of you and from the generations that followed him. And finally, I'd like to offer condolences to our community, to the Suburban Torah, Livingston and wider community. Despite not being able to be here, present in the shul since the outbreak of COVID, Rabbi Kazinetz's loss has very much been felt throughout the community and will continue to be felt as long as this community stands. Such was the impact that he had. I'm humbled to open this evening's program as, without question, I knew Rabbi Kasinetz far less than most of our speakers and probably from everyone present here this evening. However, the few short interactions that I was zoche to have with Rabbi Kasinetz, together with the stories, the anecdotes that I've heard from so many people, not just in the last few weeks, but since I came to Livingston, have all made an indelible impression upon me. But the most powerful testament, by far the most powerful testament to who Rabbi Kasinetz was, is imbued within these very walls. Because when people first visit the synagogue of the Suburban Torah Center, without fail, they comment on the warm, welcoming, and inclusive atmosphere with which they are greeted by everyone in this building. Guests cannot help themselves but comment on the eclectic makeup of the mispalalim that they see around them, as well as the palpable desire for growth and connection which runs through the veins of this community. These are the foundation stones with which the Kasinetz sought to build a Livingston Torah community. And Baruch Hashem, these foundation stones continue to stand strong and are the hallmarks of our shul. Rabbi Kasinetz was, for so many of our shul members and beyond, not only their shul rabbi, but for so many, he provided an introduction to the vibrancy of Torah Judaism. I've heard from countless people how he would encourage, sometimes softly, sometimes a little more harsh, in spiritual growth and commitment, urging people to reach new heights in their connection to Hashem and their growth, especially to parents of young families. Someone who grew up here in Livingston commented to me just a couple of weeks ago that if it hadn't have been for Rabbi Kazinetz's influence on his own parents, he simply doesn't know if his own children would be Jewish. And that's just one story. We'll never know truly the breadth of impact or the number of souls that Rabbi Kasinetz was able to touch and to reach. He was a visionary. It's well known that following his position as assistant rabbi to Rabbi Zev Siegel in the Young Israel of Newark, that he saw the need. He saw the need for an Orthodox shul here in Livingston, despite not being an abundance of typical Orthodox observant people living here. He saw the potential. He saw the need. and with the Rebbe's blessing, began laying the foundations for the incredible community in which we live. I couldn't help think of what we read in last week's Parsha, in the Parsha of Beshalach, as Bnei Israel stood on the banks of the Yam Suf, with the Egyptians chasing not far behind. We see HaKadosh Baruch Hu seems to criticize Moshe for calling out in prayer. God says, why are you praying now? Just go into the sea. And it's a strange thing, because of course we know that tefillah, prayer, is very important. It's crucial. However, we learn that having already had so many assurances from God, there should have been no question in Moshe's mind as to their success, and he should have just urged the people forward. Rav Moshe Feinstein writes in his commentary in Drash Moshe that this is the same attitude. This is the same attitude that Torah leaders and Torah teachers must have. We are promised, lo tishkach mipi zar'o. The Torah will not be forgotten. It's a promise in the Torah. And therefore, in the same way, those who dedicate their lives to building Torah institutions, to building shuls, to disseminating Torah, will have success. They just have to believe it, and they just have to go for it. It was clear to me as I reviewed this last week that this was the motivating force behind Rabbi and Mrs. Kasinetz. The belief and the determination propelling them forward. And we, the community now, are the beneficiaries of their extraordinary efforts. And we must continue to build and grow both ourselves and the community following his incredible example. For his connection, when encouraging people to connect and grow, it was mainly through the learning of Torah. It was paramount. And after discussing with the family, we decided that with this in mind, we're going to be launching a memorial campaign to perpetuate his memory by purchasing Sfarim. By purchasing Sfarim for our Beis Medrash. And it's in his schus that we hope to bolster the Torah learning that takes place in this building every single day, by ensuring that our shelves are filled with full sets of both the classics and the more new recent Torah scholarships, all in his merit. Please look out for the details when we launch this campaign and help perpetuate his legacy, so the Torah that continues to be learned in Livingston and the community of suburban Torah has Rabbi Kasinetz's stamp very much on it. As I mentioned, we're honored to have with us this evening Mayor Al Anthony, Mayor of Livingston, and it's my pleasure to please invite him up to share a few words.
Good evening, everyone. I'm accompanied here for this important occasion and for such an important individual and the impact that he had in throughout the entire community and outside of the community, but here in Livingston, and the tremendous amount of integrity and dignity and what he did for Livingston. And we stand here for Livingston, even though he impacted so many other communities. I'm here accompanied with Deputy Mayor Ed Meinhardt. We have Councilman Sean Klein and Councilman Michael Vieira, and we're also accompanied by a former council member, Rosie Begoli, now Assemblywoman. So we have, and everyone here's been mayor. Rosie wasn't on long enough to be mayor, so she's Assemblywoman. So we brought a lot of people here for this important event. We do have a proclamation we want to read, and we're all going to break up this proclamation. So beginning with Ed.
Whereas Rabbi Moshe Aaron Kasinetz, and the esteemed founder of the Orthodox Jewish community in Livingston, New Jersey, passed away on Saturday, September 30th, 2023, at the age of 89. And whereas inspired by the teachings and guidance of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem M. Schneerson, Rabbi Kasinetz, along with his wife Sarah and their 3 young daughters, arrived in Livingston in 1969. And through his dedicated leadership, established a synagogue of the Suburban Torah Center in a small cinder block building in the Old Town Center.
Whereas, despite facing challenges, Rabbi Kazinetz's vision and commitment led to the growth of the SSTC community, culminating in the construction of a beautiful new synagogue at 85 West Mount Pleasant Avenue. And whereas, under Rabbi Kazinetz's guidance, the SSTC has flourished, expanded to include a Bat Midrash, Hebrew school, nursery school, and various initiatives that have enriched and broadened the community. And
whereas Rabbi Kasinetz' impact is felt far beyond SSTC with the founding of the VOD of Metro West, Mikvah Chana, and various other initiatives that have enriched the broader community.
Whereas Rabbi Moshe Kasinetz, a man of integrity, dignity, and kindness, with extraordinary intelligence and vast knowledge, had a profound impact on the lives of those around him, fostering a non-judgmental and inclusive environment at SSTC. And
whereas Rabbi Kazinetz's influence extended beyond the synagogue and school, reaching thousands who connected with their Jewish identity, and his legacy continues to impact generations. And now, therefore, it be resolved, I, Alfred M. Anthony, Mayor of Township of Livingston, County of Essex, State of New Jersey, do hereby proclaim January 29th, 2024 as Rabbi Moshe Kasinetz Day. In his honor and of his remarkable contributions to the Livingston Township, his enduring legacy of love, respect, and inclusivity, and the far-reaching impact of his initiatives, I thereby sign this.
Regrettably, a slight change to the program at the last minute. Rabbi Yehuda Krinsky, Rabbi Kazinetz's brother-in-law, was unable to join us this evening, and we wish him well. But I'd like to now introduce Mr. Charles Kushner, who shared a very special relationship with Rabbi Kasinetz as both a supporter and a partner in multiple projects, to share a few words.
First, I would like to thank Mrs. Kasinetz and the entire Kasinetz family for affording me the honor to make remarks and share my remarks about our beloved Rabbi Kasinetz. When I walked through the entrance of the building, I noticed that there's a dedication plaque that we did when the shul was redone. And the dedication is in honor main sanctuary. They asked me, what do I want to honor? And I said, I want to honor the main sanctuary in honor of Rabbi Kasinetz and Mrs. Kasinetz. And I thought about it at the time, and I spoke to Cyril, and we said, here's a person that started this community with selfless sacrifice for everything they've done. And it was important to us. We thought, should we dedicate it in memory? Should we dedicate it in honor of other people? We said, there's only one person, one couple that's appropriate for this dedication so many years ago, and it was Rabbi and Mrs. Kasinetz. And it was a testimony, it was a testament to recognize your selfless sacrifice for starting and establishing a community. Many people that are the beneficiaries of this community do not realize that when you came here with your 3 daughters, there was no minyan. There were no Orthodox people. People don't realize that when they come to this building today looks like a shul. This building was an old, ugly industrial building that Rabbi Kasinetz picked because he had the vision to see what this community could be. And with it, he put together a minyan and people who had a tendency, an inclination for the Orthodox, and he drew them in and created a shul that many people today are the beneficiaries of, but don't realize that it was all Rabbi and Mrs. Kasinetz and their family. Rabbi Kasinetz had a very deep and profound impact on my life personally and on my family. Many people go to, we're in the world where people talk about joining a country club. Well, people don't realize in the Orthodox community, the shul is our country club. This is where we come to socialize, to have friends, to daven, for our children to mingle with other friends, for us to come to give, to tzedakah for us, some people to come and who are the need for tzedakah. But the core of our lives really is the shul. It's not anything else. And Rabbi Kasinetz was the center and core of this shul. And as a result, on my life, how we davened, when we went to shul, how we observed the holidays, how my children participated in the congregation, and how they've grown up is very largely a product and result of directly related to Rabbi Kasinetz and the values that he taught us and all the things that he showed us and guided us. In typical Lubavitch fashion, Rabbi Kasinetz embraced and welcomed everyone. He didn't put a label on people. There was no Orthodox, conservative, reform. A Jew was a Jew, and if you're a Jew, you're welcome. My father, Oliver Shalom, used to say that Hitler didn't put labels on Jews. If you're a Jew, you're worthy to die. He says Jews should not put labels on Jews. Rabbi Kasinetz was the ultimate in welcoming people with all of his heart, and they could have been religious, not religious, rich, poor, it didn't matter. If you were a Jew, you were welcome. And one of the nicest things about this community was when the community was much smaller, I don't know if it happens today, if someone would come in and it was a new member or just coming to look at the community, people would go to the back and say, please sit with me. And it was Rabbi Kasinetz that taught us how to do that. It was his idea of welcoming and accepting all Jews. It wasn't how you got to shul, that was your business, but come to shul. And that's what Rabbi Kasinetz wanted. Rabbi Kasinetz was with us in the best of times. He was with us at bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, weddings, brisses, baby girl births. At the best of times, we laughed together, we celebrated together. Rabbi Kasinetz was also with us in the worst of times. He was with us when we lost loved ones, and he was there with us completely and totally with all of his heart and soul. There were years in our lives, I could speak personally, and it meant so much to me. I'm expressing it tonight, but I expressed it once to Rabbi Kasinetz, Oliver Shalom, but I'll express it here publicly, that Cyril and I, we had a problem in our life, which was very public. And I'll never forget, and it was a difficult time in our lives for our family. And I'll never forget Rabbi Kasinetz calling me and saying, what can I do to help you? I'm here with you. I know you, I support you. Please tell me, how can I help you? He never left my side. And he expressed, even though Rabbi Kasinetz, there were years of difference between us, and he was my esteemed rabbi, I felt a friendship and a kinship to him and a love for him. And that spoke volumes to me of who Rabbi Kasinetz was. It was good times, but in the bad times, he stood by you and never left your side. I personally never knew how hard a rabbi worked until I lost my own father, because I used to go to shul. I think it started at 6:50 in the morning. There were people waiting for Rabbi Kasinetz that had talk about a funeral, that had talk about a bris, that had talk about a religious issue, that had talk about a complaint, lots of complaints. That comes with the job being the rabbi. I'm sure you know, you've learned that. But then I would come back from Mincha and Maariv, and Rabbi Kasinetz was there, and the same, different people with different problems and different issues. And I'd leave to go back to work or go home, and Rabbi Kasinetz was working. He was 7 days a week. I used to kid with Rabbi Kasinetz and ask, please don't speak so long. You have to work today, but it's my day off. So please, don't make us sit so long. But I was always impressed by his commitment to people. It was full and total. It wasn't partial, and he was available all the time for everyone. The Rabbi Kasinetz pushed the community to limits with his great vision. So I remember the Erev, Cyril and I were talking about it earlier. I think Cyril and Rabbi Kasinetz you were the Erev committee, I think. And when they were the Erev committee, the Erev wasn't important to a lot of people living here. Me personally, if I had an Erev or I didn't have an Erev, it wasn't really important in my life. It wasn't important in my religiosity. But Rabbi Kasinetz knew to take this community to the next level and welcome even more Jews and bring more Jews into the realm of Yiddishkeit that he established. He needed an Erev. And I don't even know if the Lubavitch really hold from the Erev, but it was very important for what it created for the community. The same with the mikveh. I worked with Rabbi Kasinetz personally in the mikveh, and there was the distinction between the Lubavitch way of halacha with a mikveh versus maybe Ashkenaz. And we did it according to Rabbi Kasinetz. We got Rabbi Zalman Grossbaum's father involved. And I remember the joy that Rabbi Kasinetz felt that we finally have a dignified, beautiful mikveh that could service the community and beyond. I'm proud to say that today I take nachas knowing that my daughter Dara and Toba Leah and Rabbi Grossbaum, they're watching the mikveh, and it's such an important jewel of the community. People did realize, but I realized maybe even more, what a brilliant mind Rabbi Kasinetz had, and he had a photographic memory. I'll never forget, that it was always usual that before a boy was bar mitzvahed or a girl was bat mitzvahed, that the boy would come to the bima, would read the Torah, so the girl would come up here and practice her speech, so they would be comfortable. They wouldn't be nervous at the time that they were bar mitzvahed. I came to shul with Jared. Jared went to the time the bima was over there because it was a much smaller shul, and Jared was learning the parsha. I was talking to Rabbi Kasinetz. We were having a conversation about something that was serious. I don't recall exactly, but we were engaged talking about a conversation that required 100% concentration, 100% attention. Rabbi Kasinetz was talking to me, and then he was saying, Jared, you said a word wrong. Correct this word. We continue our conversation. Jared, the notes are wrong. Sing it this way. Continue. His brilliance and his photographic memory was something I've never seen in another human being. And I deal with a lot of smart business people that are very good with numbers and business, but I've never seen anybody with Rabbi Kazinetz's brilliance. Rabbi Kasinetz also, he taught us the importance of a bat mitzvah. Cyril grew up in Far Rockaway, in an Orthodox home in Far Rockaway, New Jersey. I grew up not Orthodox in Elizabeth, New Jersey, but regardless of how we both grew up, we never saw girls being bat mitzvahed. We never envisioned that we would have daughters that would be bat mitzvahed. And Rabbi Kasinetz explained to us that regardless of your traditions, a bat mitzvah is very important. It's just as important as a bar mitzvah. It's important for the step from a young girl to a woman, and it's important for recognizing the importance of a woman's role in Torah, in the world, in Yiddishkeit. And I thank Rabbi Kasinetz all the time because Dara was bat mitzvah, Nikki was, it wouldn't have happened if not for Rabbi Kasinetz. And now we're, thank God, Baruch Hashem, seeing bat mitzvahs, the tradition carrying over to grandchildren. And I think of it every time there's a bat mitzvah. Thank you, Rabbi Kasinetz. I remember Dara as a youth leader here in this shul. Rabbi Kasinetz set the tone that everybody had to care for each other. Dara was maybe 10, 11 years old, but she was a youth teacher, counselor. But at that time, there were very few kids, and Rabbi Kasinetz made everybody, you're a part of this community, you act, you work for the community, you be part of the community, you contribute to the community. And it was a feeling that Rabbi Kasinetz taught us, and a feeling that that spread to everyone. I'll share just one last story, is that also people didn't appreciate Rabbi Kazinetz's humor and his warmth. He had a very subtle humor. One time I came into shul and we used to sit on that side, and Jared, my son Jared, had a broken arm. My son Josh came in sitting next to me, and he had a broken nose. I don't know if something was broken with him too. Josh broke a lot of bones in his body. And Rabbi Kasinetz comes, and I always insisted that the boys sit with me in shul. I didn't see them all week because I used to work very hard. And Shabbos, I wanted them to sit with me. I didn't know what they would be doing in groups, but I knew if they sat with me, they'd at least behave for a little while. And Rabbi Kasinetz came over to me, saw the boys in a cast and a sink on his nose. He says, if I didn't know better, I would think you're hitting your kid. You know, he was kidding with me. And he said, but he came over and put a smile on his face, and he put his arm around me, and his warmth and his sense of humor just was so heartfelt. I want to just conclude by saying, and I'm looking at Mrs. Kasinetz directly, that I had the greatest love, respect, admiration, and appreciation for your husband, for your father, for Rabbi Kasinetz. His legacy will forever be remembered and admired and respected. Everybody who walks into this shul should know that this is all, people come into this community, and thank God they're the beneficiaries of everything that's here today. But it's all because of Rabbi Kasinetz, all because of Mrs. Kasinetz, all because of the Kasinetz family. So you have our love, respect, and appreciation forever.
Like to invite Rachel Sebag, to share some remarks about her grandfather.
Good evening. Thinking about what to say here tonight, my mind inevitably turned to memories of my grandfather's speeches. One of my earliest memories is of running down the aisle and sitting next to my mother, being gently admonished for running in shul, and looking up at this podium. You don't. Okay. Closer. Okay. Okay. Okay, Abba. You and Zaidi taught me how to give a speech, so hopefully I won't let you down. So I was saying, Bubby, that I was thinking about Zaidi's speeches and coming as a little girl to shul and sitting next to mommy and watching Zaidi, listening to Zaidi teach me and all of us about that week's parsha. He's known for having given extraordinary speeches, as anyone here who had the opportunity to hear him speak, Shabbos morning will surely remember. Each week, he would come up here and present an idea that demanded of all of us to think. With the Lubavitcher Rebbe's commentary animating the process of explication, my grandfather would pull from the broadest spectrum of Torah's sources and deftly weave complex ideas together, building questions, driving sharply and expertly to answers that clarified and inspired us, getting to the heart of profoundly important ideas in that week's parsha. These speeches, of course, were products of my grandfather's remarkable intelligence and knowledge, and also the wonderful skill he had at giving a really good speech, a skill which wasn't something he was simply born with, but that his father helped him develop. My great-grandfather Zev urged him as a young man to go to the area Shtiblach on Shabbos in Brownsville, in Brooklyn, where he grew up, and to practice giving a drasha. My great-grandfather appreciated the importance of a young person being able to stand up and say something of substance with the necessary confidence. But beyond my grandfather's wisdom and skill, these speeches reflected something much deeper about him, his belief in people's abilities. Indeed, many years, decades after his retirement, more than one person has come up to me and said how they were thinking that week about the speech he gave about that week's parsha so many years ago, how they still were reflecting on it. Because my grandfather's speeches expected a lot, but he knew us, he knew his community, and he believed in our ability to appreciate the complicated ideas presented. That belief was one of the animating ideas of my grandfather's life. When he took on the project of creating this community, it wasn't something that made logical sense necessarily, but he saw something in this place and in the people here. This belief came from a real understanding of people and seeing them as they truly are. That is to say, in seeing a person, an individual has the capacity to be. To take just one example, from here in Shul, many of us will remember Hannah Parks, Alea Shalom, an early member, who in those first years, by all accounts, was a shy woman who didn't naturally gravitate to leadership roles. And my grandfather asked her to be the sisterhood president, a role which would require of her to take on quite a public-facing position. And she was a little taken aback, but he urged her to do it, and she agreed. And she flourished in the role. And she grew into a part of herself that was previously out of view even to herself. This is emblematic of my grandfather's way, his understanding of a person's abilities, and his ability to encourage a person to go further. He would encourage us without preaching, by giving the opportunity and the support to get there. For me, I had the immense bracha to live my whole life only steps away from my grandparents. And I live my life consciously striving to be the person that my grandfather saw me to be. I would truly leave every conversation with my grandfather thinking how he made me feel capable of doing so much in this world and of having an obligation to try. And also of having received guidance on how to go about accomplishing something. I was blessed to have a very open and honest relationship with my grandfather. He never shied away from saying exactly what was on his mind, and we lived in a state of an ongoing back and forth. He was my advisor and sounding board, giving me the necessary encouragement and advice to propel me forward, to visualize and to take on the next task. When I think about how to try and achieve whatever these goals are that I feel myself obligated to attempt, because of my grandfather's motivation, I look to my grandfather as an example. I look at how he lived his life, taking each moment, each task on with full attention, the big and the small and the spiritual and the mundane, everything. Life lived consciously, purposefully, with effort and mission. A life of chinuch, of education of oneself and of others, and of learning, always of learning. As a young girl, I was under the misapprehension that every home was filled to the rafters with books, because the two houses I grew up in, my parents' home and my grandparents' house, filled to the rafters with Sfarim. But not Sfarim left for show on shelves, but Sfarim constantly in use, constantly being pulled to answer questions around the Shabbos table and on desks and tables, always just a moment ago having been learned and referenced and studied. All this meant that when I would call my grandfather with any question about anything, he almost always had the full comprehensive answer ready to go. And better yet, he would then go back and look at those Sfarim and call me back to confirm the sources and the specifics, add a little nuance here, and engage in a real conversation about the topic to go further. Because he wasn't just interested in giving a yes, no answer or quick opinion or thought. Every conversation with my grandfather was chinuch, it was education. And the biggest lesson of how to live that I was zeicha to learn by growing up with my grandparents is what a marriage is. Their marriage is the marriage. It's the one my cousins and siblings and I all look to as the guiding example. It's true and total partnership and friendship in everything. Thank God my husband and I were married a year and a half ago with my grandfather's Masadi Kedushin at my grandparents' house. Neither of us could imagine doing our wedding any other way. And with that as our start, we know our marriage is infused with the lessons and guidance of how my grandfather lived. With his joy and his love, and the seriousness with which he took the business of living, we hope will prove equal to the task of continuing to live by his example.
My honor to invite up Rabbi Zalman Grossbaum, now the visionary builder of our Livingston community.
It's Kasinetz. Well, Kasinetz family, thank you for giving me the honor of sharing a few words today. Moshe ad Moshe, like Moshe. Gravestone of the Rambam, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon in Tiberia, bears the inscription, from Moshe to Moshe, none arose like Moshe. Tanya, the Alter Rebbe shares that each Jew possesses a nitzutz of Moshe Rabbeinu, a spark of the soul of Moshe. Through this inherent connection, every individual has the ability to emulate him. Additionally, as the quintessential Jewish leader, every account of Moshe in the Torah imparts profound lessons in leadership. Tonight, as we honor the life of Rabbi Moshe Kasinetz, we discover inherent parallels from Moshe Rabbeinu's life. In Parshas Pinchas, when Moshe Rabbeinu was told that he would not enter the land of Eretz Yisrael, he selflessly turned to Hashem and pleaded, Yifkaid Hashem Elokei Aruchos l'chol basar ish ala eda. Hashem of the spirits of all flesh, set a man over the people, that the Jewish people should have leaders going forward. Rashi explains that Moshe said to Hashem, Ribono shel olam, Master of the universe, you know the soul of each and every individual. You know that no two are alike. Appoint for them a leader who could relate to each and every one of them in accordance with their individual character. Rabbi Yitzchak Barditchev explains that Moshe asked Hashem that just like Hashem is the spirit of all flesh, of all people, no matter their level of observance, tzaddik or rasha, so too the future leaders of the Jewish people should relate to all. They should love every single Jew equally. For those who are relatively new to the community, as was mentioned, and perhaps may take for granted the welcoming spirit of suburban Torah, it's essential to recognize that this was not accidental. This was the spirit that Rabbi Kasinetz, Badal Chaim Tovim, Rebbetzin Kasinetz, learned from the Rebbe and instilled in the very fabric, in the very essence of our community. Rabbi Kasinetz lived by the teaching of the Alter Rebbe that every Jew is a chelik elokam mal mamash, an actual part of Hashem. And he embraced everybody from diverse backgrounds and various levels of observance, instilling them with a sense of pride in their personal connection to Hashem and to their heritage. Rabbi Kasinetz ensured that everyone felt entirely at home, respecting each person for the divine spark, the chelik elokah that's in them, and recognizing their spiritual potential. In this week's Parsha, we learn how Moshe Rabbeinu's father-in-law, Yisrael, saw him adjudicating all the disputes and issues that arose among the Jewish people. Yisrael proposes a system of higher and lower courts to respond efficiently to people's issues. On surface, this issue seemed quite basic. Why didn't Moshe Rabbeinu himself figure this out? The Rebbe explains that Moshe did not see anything wrong with what he was doing because there was nothing wrong with what he was doing. Moshe's way of addressing problems was to raise the person to a spiritual level where the problem had no effect on them. He raised them to a place where it ceased to be a problem. Late one night, a rabbi came to 770 with an urgent matter for the Rebbe. Being that Rabbi Chaldakov, the Rebbe's secretary, was already in the Rebbe's study for the final meeting of the night, the rabbi decided to slip a note under the door, figuring that Rabbi Chaldakov would see it as he left the Rebbe's room. A while later, Rabbi Chaldakov came out and shared the response from the Rebbe with his brachas, with his blessings. Then Rabbi Chaldakov paused and said, by the way, when you slipped the note under the door, the Rebbe was pacing in the room and picked up the note from the floor. The rabbi was deeply distressed that he had caused the Rebbe to bend down and pick up the note. So he wrote a letter to the Rebbe asking for forgiveness. Shortly afterwards, he received a reply from the Rebbe. Kol inyonai is su'ufaybin. My entire purpose is to lift up. Speaking to members of our community, a recurring theme emerges. Rabbi Kasinetz cared profoundly for every individual on a personal level and assisted them as they navigated life's challenges. Many recounted how he lifted them up, both emotionally and spiritually, with a combination of wisdom and love. Rabbi Kasinetz was not only highly intelligent, with extensive knowledge of religious and general issues, but he also had profound wisdom. He was a chacham. This was exemplified by his deep understanding of people, relating to them within the context of their circumstance. On a personal note, Tobalei and I have immense hakaras hatov to Rabbi Kasinetz. He was a mentor and taught us so much. He welcomed us to Livingston warmly and always, always encouraged us. Everything that has been created in Livingston was built on the foundation that he laid. In Parsha Shemais, finally, we learn about the moment that Moshe was chosen as a leader to take the people out of Mitzrayim and to give them the Torah. The Torah tells us that Moshe followed a lamb and came upon a burning bush. And the verse states, Vayar v'hine hasneh boyer be'esh. And he saw, and behold, the bush was burning with fire. Vasneh inenu ukal. But the bush was not being consumed. After Moshe had already seen the bush, the Torah then goes on to tell us, Vayomer Moshe asudin avere. Moshe said, let me turn and see. Madua yivar hasneh. Why does the bush not burn? And the very next verse, we're told, Vayar Hashem kisar lirais. Hashem saw that Moshe took note. Vayikra elav elikim. And Hashem called to Moshe. The Medrash, such a beautiful Medrash, explains that this was the defining moment that made Hashem choose Moshe. Most people would ignore a bush burning in the desert. It wasn't bothering anybody. But to Moshe, nothing was happenstance. The fact that he took note and was ready to learn and to respond made him the type of leader that Hashem was looking for. Here in Livingston, over and over and over again, that is the way Rabbi Kasinetz responded, always seeing the nuance in people's lives, always seeing what was needed in the community. I remember when the opportunity, as Mr. Kushner had mentioned, for the mikvah to be built, and it faced significant challenges and justified reasons for not progressing. And at a critical juncture, when the project seemed to have stalled, Rabbi Kasinetz stepped up at that meeting, taking responsibility for the mikvah. This crucial step made it possible for Mikvah Chana to be a reality. He served as the president, and at every one of the meetings and throughout the year, he took tremendous nachas in the brachas that this mikvah has brought to our community. The Zohar teaches, V'achayit en elibai, the living should take to heart. Rabbi Kasinetz wasn't just the founder of the shul, responsible for building the membership or the physical structure. He was the neshama. He was the soul of the shul, infusing the community with a profound mission and vision. And just like the neshama, the soul of a person lives on beyond their physical years on earth, so does the mission and vision of Rabbi Kasinetz that he created live on in this shul. As his talmidim, his students, both those who had the privilege of learning directly from him and those learning in the atmosphere that he created, let us continue his legacy and be inspired by his love and his unconditional dedication. Thank you.
I'd like to now invite Ms. Chana Malamed to please share with us some remarks.
To Zaidi. In a dark world, Zaidi was light, a romantic in love with God, Torah and mitzvos, his fellow, his wife, a connoisseur of beauty, a man of style of his own. The order of the world of Tikkun would be his. The moon, the ocean's tides were on his clocks. I remember his ballpoint pen, his handkerchief, his sense of humor. To borrow a phrase from the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, this town bears the marks of his radiant influence. I stare at the image of my Zaidi with his Rebbe, and I cannot help but see a gray Borsellino in a sea of black hats.
And I'd like to invite Yitzchak Barber, Rabbi Kazinetz's grandson, to please share.
Thank you, Rabbi Proops. If I knew you were going to say that, Khan, I would have spoken before you. Wunderbar. Good evening, everyone. Being in the presence of my grandfather, I felt a heightened sense of who I was as a human being. The truest version of myself coming to the fore. Suddenly, in his presence, what was Iker and what was Tafel, what was the main thing and important, and what was unimportant, became abundantly clear. And he was able to make you feel this way and engender such feelings many times without even saying anything. Just being in his presence was enough. And he can make you feel this, make me feel this way on a random Tuesday in the middle of November. So if it was any major occasion or event in our lives or in my life, speaking for myself, it could not be official until he was there to give it his unique stamp. He made it real and gave it purpose. There was a gravitas that he brought to every occasion. A bar mitzvah was no longer just a bar mitzvah. Now it was a bar mitzvah. It wasn't just a big party or celebration. That it was a new chapter in life that was being officially marked, and the responsibility that came with that. And he would make you feel this way, not as a burden, but the way he conveyed the message, it felt like you were lucky to have that special and unique opportunity. Because everything that he did was rooted in Torah, so it was rooted in truth. Soon after Shiva for my grandfather ended, my mother and I were having a conversation. Oddly enough, it was at the Shiva of my grandmother, because my father's mother passed away 2 days after my grandfather did. But we were talking, and inevitably, the conversation obviously turned to my grandfather. And my mother pointed something out, which I kind of knew, but the way she sort of shone a light on it, that when the renovation for the shul took place, as Charlie was talking about earlier, my grandfather was very involved in every single detail. And one of those details, if you see above me right here, above the Aron Kodesh, my grandfather wanted it to say, Shivisi Hashem Lenegdi Samid, that I place God before me always. And I think it's very fitting that he chose those words to adorn the Aron Kodesh, because that's how he lived his life and how he taught others to live their lives. He always was cognizant that there was a higher purpose in life because there was Hashem above him. He was the consummate gentleman and the ultimate mensch, who always was consistently principled, not having a different persona depending on whether he was in private or public. My grandfather was who he was through and through because he was real. But what I find most interesting is that the very next few words of the pasuk in Tehillim, which ironically is one of the capitals of Tehillim, Kapitelach Tehillim we said this evening, whether the rabbi led earlier today, Kapitel Tazayin, where Shivisi Hashem is from. It says, Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid, kimimini balemet. That I put Hashem before me always, and that he is at my right hand, I shall not falter. And that was really the kunz, as Zadie would say, of how he lived that. It's not on the Aron Kodesh, but it's that pasuk. That God was always above him, but it wasn't in a sense of, oh, there's a policeman watching. Because God is above me, he was 100% assured. He had assured confidence in everything that he did because God was at his right hand, so he knew he won't falter. I remember as a child, I loved watching my grandfather, before he retired, prepare for Shabbos on a Friday afternoon. The energy that emanated from him was palpable. And as soon as the Shabbos candles were lit, off to shul we'd go. Now, coming to shul with my grandfather was an event. The best way I could describe it, it was like going to a major concert or sporting event, and my grandfather was the lead singer or the star quarterback, and I was the lucky kid who had VIP seats and a backstage pass. So into shul we'd come, and my grandfather had a checklist of the last few minute things he had to do before Mincha would start, before Shabbos. First thing, he'd go into the main sanctuary. It wasn't this one, but the original one before the renovation. And he would check the bookshelves to make sure the Chumashim and Sidurim were straight, front of the shelves, not pushed in, and evenly distributed on both sides of the Mechitza. Then he'd head to the bathrooms and the coat room to make sure they were clean and orderly. And upon seeing this on one occasion, I asked him, I said, Zadie, why are you the one doing this? Isn't there someone hired to do this? He looked at me and he said, Yitzchak, when you're in charge, everything is your responsibility. Even the smallest thing. Especially the smallest thing. Because if the small things are too small, then the big things will be too big. And then he added that when a person walks into a shul that is mesudar, that is clean and orderly, the impression that it can make can be just as important, if not more so, than the davening itself or the rabbi's speech. Speaking of which, let's talk about the davening and that speech. Davening with my grandfather as rabbi, the atmosphere that he set under his guidance, the feeling that he fostered was Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid kimimini balamet. On the one hand, there was a seriousness mixed with the perfect amount of joy. Because yes, God is above us, but because of that, we knew that he was at our right hand. He's on our right hand and we won't falter. So there was the seriousness with joy. Now, being his grandson, obviously I'm biased, but I feel 100% assured in saying this, unequivocally so, that no one read the Torah like my grandfather. The way he laned was truly second to none. Aside from how heartfelt and beautiful it sounded, when my grandfather laned, the Torah portion came alive. I had the great privilege of having him teach me how to lane before my bar mitzvah, an honor that I will cherish for the rest of my life. And when he tested me, there was no okay or very good. It was done correctly or it was incorrect. But it was understood then that he never asked or demanded anything from anyone that he didn't expect from himself. As a child, when davening got to be too long, inevitably I would go into the halls and run around. But I always made it a point to come back in for his speech. As we've heard already tonight, and I'm sure whoever witnessed it themselves doesn't need to be told how incredible they were. But I was a small child. But I didn't go back in because it was the right thing to do because I was so special, or because it may have been frowned upon if the rabbi's grandson was running around the halls while he was speaking. I went in because how could I not go in? It was like crunch time. Final 2 minutes of the game, I had front row seats. Who would miss that? That's the way he made me feel. It was exciting. Hearing him speak, even as a child, it was more fun to go do that than to continue playing. And I remember on several occasions, as he would talk, I would pan the room, looking at all the other congregants' faces, seeing how they were listening to him, watching how they were listening to him. And I remember thinking to myself, isn't this just amazing how every last person was fully engaged? And I think to myself, that's my grandfather. My grandfather, as many of you know, studied accounting as a young man. But I think he was naturally an accountant of people. He liked people. He understood people. There was, no matter where you were holding in life, he met you where you were. He knew how to dial in to make you tick. What made you tick? And I remember observing as a child how he took into account, no pun intended, every last person that walked into shul. Which is why when he was rabbi, I don't think it was possible to walk into shul, to walk into SSTC, and not be noticed by him, and at some point and in some way be acknowledged by him. And I think we heard tonight by several speakers before me about the atmosphere he set in the shul, the tone he set in the shul. The members followed suit, which is why you can't walk into this shul and not have almost many members say hello, whether they know you or not. It is a welcoming place because of the tone that he set. I'm sure my grandfather would be very touched by every person here this evening, remembering him and honoring him. But I could also hear my grandfather say, in his inimitable way, "Was wird sein die Uftu?" what's going to come out of this? What can come out of this? An opportunity. We're all sitting here tonight together. That was my grandfather's way. A bunch of people, a bunch of Jews get together is an opportunity. God shines on us. That's why a minyan of 10, davening in a minyan is greater than davening by yourself. Because when people are together, Jews come together, it's special. So my grandfather was an incredibly talented and gifted person, as anybody who knew him would know. But in my humble opinion, I think that he channeled those talents and gifts in the way that he did and lived his life in the way that he did. Because firstly, he had examples as parents who were incredibly remarkable people. But he also had the privilege of growing up in the presence of the Lubavitcher Rebbe and the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. So he saw firsthand what ultimate truth is and lived with that credo and ethos his entire life. And then spent his entire adult life trying to share that with others. And obviously, what is ultimate truth? Torah and mitzvahs. So I just feel that each one of us know what it is that we can do. I know there was an initiative being mentioned, the rabbi mentioned, which will be beautiful, and we look forward to getting the details. But just personally in our own lives, in whichever way it is, whether in the realm of learning Torah or doing mitzvahs, let's do something and do it in his honor. I would like to close by just sharing one other thought. In Chabad, it's the custom that the matzeva, the headstone, is put up on the grave as soon as Shiva is ended. So, obviously, as soon as Shiva was over, that's what we did. That was what was done. And during the Shiva, we were the texts that would go on the matzeva. My father and my uncles mainly were the ones going over it, and we saw drafts of it, was shared with the family. But it still just felt abstract. The day after the Shiva ended, when a picture was shared with the family of the actual thing, it hit me like a slap in the face. Seeing the name Moshe Aaron Kasinetz on a grave was like, what? Life without him in it doesn't make sense. And the next thought that popped into my head was, we are believers. Anachnu ma'aminim b'nei ma'aminim. Ani ma'amin be'emunah shalema b'vias HaMashiach. We don't believe that this is how this story ends. So to all my fellow Kasinetz grandchildren, a little family insider thing for you. Only this time it won't be a joke. As Zaidi would say, may God Almighty bless us that we may merit the ultimate redemption with Mashiach Tzidkenu b'mehera v'yameinu now, speedily in our days.
like to welcome Rabbi Mendy Kazowitz, Rabbi of Chabad West Orange. I know had a special relationship with Rabbi Kasinetz.
Tonight we pay tribute to an extraordinary individual of Moshe Kasinetz, a guiding light in my life and in yours. For years, Rabbi Kasinetz and I shared a very special bond, a connection that transcended the usual boundaries of teacher and student or rabbi and congregant. His wisdom, compassion, and guidance made him a beacon of light, of hope, and inspiration. Rabbi Kasinetz was a shining example of kindness, humility, and dedication. His legacy will live on through the countless hearts and minds he touched. I will always cherish the memories of our conversations, debates, shared moments of joy and sorrow. He was with us through our greatest simchas and there for me in my most challenging moments. I believe the family asked me to speak because they know of our very close relationship. I can't tell you how many times it happened over the years. I would introduce myself. I would say, "Hi, I'm Mendy Kazowitz," and they would say, "Oh, your father lives in Livingston? That's the founder of the Suburban Torah Center?" Right? During the Shiva, our daughter, Chana, called from Australia. She was sobbing on the phone. And through her tears, she said, "What happened to Zaidi?" A new teacher saw the announcement on a website and mentioned to her he was so sorry to hear about her grandfather. So the relationship was very personal, almost like family. But Reb Moshe, as I affectionately called him, was my Rav. In Pirkei Avos, Perek Aleph, Mishnah Vav, we learn the famous saying of Rabbi Shua, "Aseh lecha Rav, pnei lecha chaver." V'hevi dan es kol ha'adam l'kav schus. Make yourself a Rav, a teacher. Acquire for yourself a friend and judge every person favorably. The question could be asked, what's the significance of this language? Aseh lecha, make yourself a Rav. Shouldn't it be kach lecha, take for yourself? You're not making him. He's already there. You're just accepting him as your Rav. So we all know many rabbis, but the Rav that's being referred to in this Mishnah is referring to the one who you make your Rav, someone who you feel close with, who knows you well, who understands your needs, your struggles, and can guide you on your level. In other words, your personal Rav. And in 2007, I asked Rabbi Kasinetz to be my Rav and my Mashpia. It was a very emotional moment. He taught me so much, more than I can share. In fact, most of what we spoke about was very personal, as I'm sure you can understand. Many years ago, when we first started our morning minyan, and he liked to attend the morning minyan for many years after, maybe because of the later hour, Chabad minyan. He said something. It was a joke, but he said, "From my experience, don't get too excited about having a minyan because you're only one day away from not having one." Of course, he said it with a smile and a twinkle in his eye. He was encouraging it at the same time, extremely practical, and he wanted to make sure that I wouldn't get ahead of myself. The last time we spoke was just a few weeks before he passed away. I was excited to report everything that was going on at Chabad of West Orange, especially the minyan that's stronger than ever. And he was very proud of me, and I know that because he told me that. On Shabbos, we read Oz Yashir. And the question is asked, why does the song start with the words Oz Yashir? They will sing in the future. Why shouldn't it be read? Then they sang now. So quoting our sages from Sanhedrin, Rashi says that from here we find the source in the Torah which alludes to Tchias HaMesim. The Torah writes, will sing in future tense to tell us that Moshe will sing in the future when he will physically return back to the living. Last week, I stopped by to visit the caver of Rabbi Kasinetz, Zichrono Livracha. On the Matzeva, it's written that he was a chassid mekusher, extremely close and dedicated to the Lubavitch Rebbe of blessed memory. On the 7th day of Pesach in 1972, the Rebbe, in a few brief words, conveyed a mind-changing interpretation of Rashi's commentary on Az Yashib. And the Rebbe explained that the revelation of Hashem during the splitting of the sea was so great that Moshe Rabbeinu and the Jewish people were able to see how past, present, and future are all actually one. So when they saw and sang about the miracle of the splitting of the sea, they were also able to see and sing about the future and final redemption. To his Rebbetzin, his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, may Hashem comfort you on our great loss and bring you strength and courage, and also joy in knowing that at any moment, Keheref Ayin, like the blink of an eye, we will all greet Mashiach and the Golus will end, and we will all be reunited with our loved ones once again. But until that moment, let's continue to give him Yiddish, Chsiddish, and Nachas, and prepare ourselves by increasing in our dedication to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the Torah, to the Holy Land and its people, in his honor and in his memory. Rabbi Moshe, your impact on my life has been profound. I'll carry your guidance and your life lessons and love with me always. May the neshama of Rav Moshe Aaron ben Rav Zev be bound up by the bond of everlasting life. Thank you.
Since we moved to Livingston, and as I mentioned, we didn't get the zchus to have Rabbi Kasinetz here to daven with us, but his seat is always there. And just behind his drawer, So our connection, unfortunately, not that we know all the family so well, but certainly for both Sarah and I, our connection to the Kasinetzes is very much through the Frommers, and just the kibbud av and ve'im that we see from you and from your siblings is just remarkable. And Mirz Hashem, we should all be zoche. We should all be zoche to see such kibbud av ve'im. It gives me pleasure to introduce Dror to lead us in the siyum.
Thank you. I wanted to say a few words before I speak. Thank you as we conclude this very intense time of mourning. I wanted to thank the community for the outpouring of love, for the embraces, for the memories, for coming, for sharing. I never thought that giving food in the Shiva is so important. Now I know it is. And thank you, Rabbi. You led it all. You did a lot. Your support, your words of wisdom really warmed our heart and continue to help us every day in those difficult times. And since we started with a political statement, I'll say one: vote yes. I will try to be brief since I'm last, and I probably will fail. In the past 30 days, this community achieved an extraordinary goal. We learned together nearly 4,200 Mishnayos, and we are ready to finish the Shas. As we plowed through those Mishnayos, we explored a lot of disagreements, thousands of disagreements. And those disagreements can make one feel that things are not settled, that halakha is difficult. It's a fight. It's a conflict. The last Mishnah is coming to teach us how to look at it properly. The last Mishnah is talking about the fact that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says that God is going to reward every single tzaddik, every single member of the Tanoim, everyone who speaks, everyone who share their opinion. And it doesn't matter that one says that it's allowed and the other one says it's not allowed. Each one of them has the same goal in mind. And the goal is to increase peace in the world, to reveal godliness in the world. The differences between them is just the strategy, how to achieve that. And we all need to keep that in mind, that as long as we have the right goal, we can have different strategies, and that's fine, and that's good. And each one of us is going to be rewarded for the strategy that we take towards that goal. You know, when someone has everything, they say they have the world. So the Mishnah is saying that God is going to reward 310 worlds to each one who really mean it, to each one who really try to achieve the goal of bringing godliness into this world. And he brings a pasuk, La'anchilo avayesh v'otzoteim amaleh, that God is going to fill our treasury, our buckets. It will fill it with goodness and with blessings. And the Mishnah continues to explain how can we make sure that our bucket is full and our bucket doesn't have holes. Amar Reb Shimon ben Chalafta, that God found the only way to have a good bucket, a reliable bucket, and that is peace. Peace and togetherness and unity. And he brings the pasuk, Hashem oz le'amo yiten, Hashem yevarech et amo b'shalom, pasuk that we're all familiar with. We all have to increase peace, and we have, with the peace, that will ensure that everything that God gives us is retained and is able to be used by us. Just want to mention one point from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who made several of these siyumim, several of these conclusions on the Shas. The Rebbe said about the fact that the Mishnah is mentioning that every tzaddik and tzaddik, every pious person is going to get the reward. Who are those pious and pious? Enough to say once. So the Rebbe said that the Mishnah here is referring to the quintessential conflicts or disagreements in the Mishnah, which are Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel. And he said it's a disagreement, even though there are over 300 disagreements between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel throughout Shas, it all stems from one disagreement. It all stems from one point. And the point is, again, the strategy and how to achieve the goal. Bet Shammai believes in potential, and Bet Hillel believes in actual. There are 300 examples. I'll start with one. I'll end with one. The previous Mishnah is talking about an intricate discussion about that has to do with the laws of purity or impurity, which we're not going to go into right now. So help us God. We're just going to deal with one detail, and that is the Mishnah is asking when honey is considered liquid. when a liquid touches food, is qualifies it to be impure, whatever. But when is the honey becomes liquid? Now we know how honey starts, right? It's being manufactured by the bees in a honeycomb in a beehive full of bees protecting it. Everybody agrees that at that state, honey is solid. It's a brick. And the disagreement between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel is, when is it becoming liquid? Bet Shammai says, as soon as you shoo away the bees, the beekeeper will bring smoke and will clear all of the bees from the beehive in order to extract the honey. And at that point, as soon as the bees are gone, as soon as we shoo them away with the smoke, this is when you can consider honey a liquid, because in potential, you can already have it. You don't have it yet, but the potential is there, and that's enough for Bet Shammai to call honey liquid. Bet Hillel says no. You actually need to take the honeycomb, crush it, and let the honey start spilling out. Then it's becoming liquid. Potential versus actual. The halacha nowadays is like Bet Hillel, and therefore my father-in-law, with his character as well, was very much a Bet Hillel guy. Actual, he was an accountant, you know. You need the real numbers. It needs to be there in order to make it to the credits or the debits. The potential does not make it to the balance sheet usually. But as a few speakers says before, he was also a very big believer in potential. He had also Bet Shammai in him. He believed in potential of people, in potential of every person, potentials of situations, potentials of places. So he was a healthy mix of Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel. He was also, for many years, the conduit between this community and the Lubavitcher Rebbe. In the early years, he arranged once or twice for a private audience. He brought people to the dollars. He brought their letters, their questions to the Rebbe, and he was bi-directional. He brought back the Rebbe's responses, guidance, blessings, matzah, wine, mashke, support. And he was the one that connected this community to the Lubavitcher Rebbe and vice versa. We achieved, by finishing the Shas, we achieved the Bet Hillel part. We did it. We actualized it. Check. We did it. It's in our pocket. Like Yitzchak said, what's the oiftu? I would like to suggest an oiftu. I would like to suggest that it's time for us now, right now, to achieve the Bet Hillel part, the potential. I would like to use, or to give my father-in-law the privilege to be one more time a conduit between this community and the Lubavitcher Rebbe. It's very simple. Each one of us should reach out deep inside and seek something that we're not doing yet. Some mitzvah that hard for us to do, decided not to skip. Anything. And make a decision to perpetually continue to do it. Put on tefillin, light candles, put on tzitzis, keep Shabbos, keep kosher better, keep ta'as mishpocha, learn more, daven more, give tzedakah, whatever. There are plenty of mitzvahs that we can choose. We should all reach into our potential, and we should make a decision right now in his honor to start realizing our potential. That is the number one thing we need to do. The second thing, the Mishnah is saying that we're entitled for reward for it. And this is something that worked many times with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I know personally a few living miracles. Some of them are here, some family members are here that exist because of this system. And what it is you choose a mitzvah, you decide to do it, you choose what is that you're asking from God. You ask the Rebbe to be the Militz Yosher, to ask to help you in front of God. He does it very well. He did it millions of times for millions of Jews. To ask him to present your case and to give you as a reward what you need: health, sustenance, shidduchim, success, whatever is that you need. So choose a mitzvah. Choose what you're asking for. I put papers in the back of the shul on the bima in the social hall. Okay, and pens. Please write your name, your Hebrew name, and your mother's Hebrew name. I would write Dror ben Dvorah. You can write what you decided to take upon yourself, but you don't have to. You can write what you are asking for, but you don't have to. The main thing is to write your name and your mother's name. We will collect those, and those who are on Zoom, who are not here, you can email me, you can email the rabbi, you can email me afterwards, your names. We will take those letters. I will take them personally. I will mention it next to the grave of my father-in-law to let him know that one more time he was able to extract potential from each and every one of us here in Livingston. And then I will, as you know, he's buried steps away from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I will take those names and put them on the Rebbe's grave. And the Rebbe will do his thing. And God will do his thing. And may we all merit to receive the ultimate gift, as several of you mentioned, with Mashiach speedily in our time. I will now finish the Hadran briefly, and we'll say the Kaddish, and then there are refreshments on the other side. And again, I know I said it before, but thank you. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, community. Thank you, thank you, the speakers. You really made us all proud. סליג מסך סוגצינו נשלם סדר תארות עד רן לך 6 סדרי משנה. עד רן לך 6 סדרי משנה והדרך עלן, דעתן לך 6 סדרי משנה ודעתך עלן, לא נצ'ל מנך 6 סדרי משנה ולא נצ'ל מנן, לא בעל מעדן ולא בעל מדעתי. ערב נא אדוני אלוהינו דברי תורתך בפינו ובפיות עמך בית ישראל ובעניין כולנו אנחנו וצאצאינו וצאצאי עמך בית ישראל כולנו יודעי שמך ולומדי תורתך לשמה. מאויבי תחכמני מצוותיך כי לעולם היא לי. יהי ליבי תמים בחוקיך למען לא אבוש, לעולם לא אשכח פקודיך כי בם חייתני ברוך אתה אדוני למדתני חוקיך, אמן 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 צלע ועד. מודים אנחנו לפניך אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו ששמת חלקנו משמי בית המדרש ולא מיושבי קרנות, שאנו משכימים והם משכימים. אנו משכימים לדברי תורה והם משכימים לדברים בטלים. אנו עמלים והם עמלים. אנו עמלים ומקבלים שכר והם עמלים ואינם מקבלים שכר. אנו רצים והם רצים, אנו רצים לחיי עולם הבא והם רצים לבאר שחת, שנאמר ואתה אלוהים תורידם לבאר שחת, אנשי דמים אומרים מה לא יחצו ימיהם ואני אפתח בך. יהי רצון מלפניך אדוני אלוהי כשם שעזרתנו לסיים 6 סדרי משנה. כך תעזרנו להתחיל סדרים וספרים אחרים ולסיימם, ללמוד וללמד, לשמור, לעשות ולקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה. וזכות כל התנאים ותלמידי חכמים הנזכרים בסדר תארות תעמוד לנו ולזרענו, שלא תמוש התורה מפינו ומפי זרענו וזרע זרענו עד עולם. ויקוים בנו, בהתהלכך תנחה אותך בשוכבך תשמור עליך, והקיצות היית תשיחך כי בירבו ימיך ויוסיפו לך שנות חיים. אורך ימים בימינה, בשמלה עושר וכבוד. אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. Please rise. יסגדל ויסגדה שמי רבו, בעולמו דהו עתיד להיסחדה ולחיה מתיה, ולעסוק עיתון לחיי עלמא ולמבנה קרתא דירושלים ולשכלל לחי וגבה, ולמקר פולחנה נוכרה מערה, ולעטבה פולחנה דשמיא לעשורו, וימליך קודשא בריחו במלכוסי ויקורי, ויצמח פורקוני ויקורב משיחי. בחייכם וביומכם ובחיי כל בית ישראל בעגלו ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עולמי יזבורך וישתבח ויספר ושרובם ויסנסה ויסדור ויסלה וסלוש שמי קודשה בריחו. לילה מכל ברכוסו ושירוסו תשבחוסו ונחמוסו דמירון בעולמו ואמרו אמן. על ישראל ועל רבנון ועל תלמידיון ועל כל תלמידי תלמידיון ועל כל מאן דעסקין באורייסא דבעשרא הדין ודבכל עשר ועשר. יהי לעון ולכון שלום הרב אחינו וחיסדא ברחמי בחיי אריכי ומזינו רוויחי ופורקנה מן קדם ובני בשמיא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום הרב במשמיא וחיים טובים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. אוי ששלום במרימו ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. Thank you very much. Refreshments are available in the social hall. And please bring your papers, bring your names. I'll take them to the Rabbi.